Welcome to Lit.Matters. This video is on Shakespeare's tragedy Macbeth and is designed to be a revision guide or revision device for any students of Macbeth sitting an exam on the text anytime soon, or a useful resource for anyone perhaps writing an essay on it. I'm going to focus specifically on the Italian writer Machiavelli and the influence of his writings and books on Shakespeare's thinking, and where Machiavellianism is lurking in the background of the play as a whole. And so one quotation I've perhaps chosen to a starting point is, "To be thus is nothing but to be safely thus." And this is, of course, where Macbeth is realizing that if he is going to have done all of this murdering to become king and shed all this blood in the first place, then he's going to have to be prepared to do a whole lot more murdering in order to keep hold of his power. And I think that idea that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is quite relevant, because that's, of course, what happens to poor old Macbeth. So who is Machiavelli in the first place? Well, he's an Italian writer and he's a political philosopher. I'm not going to read through everything on this slide and some of the ones coming later, because you can stop and pause this anytime you like and take down particular quotations or use it for your own ends. But essentially, he's a political philosopher in Renaissance Italy. He's most famous for his work, The Prince, Il Principe, which is a guidebook for a ruler, advising them how they keep hold of their power, how they gain power in the first place, and what the things they need to do in order to maintain their power. And it's a realistic piece of work. Okay, he's often his name has become synonymous with evil and sort of pure evil. To be a Machiavellist, to be a very evil operator, but I think that's slightly unfair. He's certainly very, very cynical, but I think he's more realistic than evil. And he's quite revolutionary, because instead of pretending to be holier than thou and pure and whiter than white and very religious in terms of telling people how to live their lives, he was just very realistic and said that, look, if you want power, this is what you got to do. And if you want to keep hold of it, then you got to do this, this, and this. And sometimes it's not pretty. It's pretty disgusting. It's grim, but this is real. And this is the reality of what is quite a brutal, quite a violent Renaissance world. However, his name is now synonymous with ruthless politics, deceit, and the pursuit of power by any means. And so at his time, Italy as a nation doesn't really exist. Italy's founded in 1870, when you get the unification of North and South and the Papal States. So back then, what you had was a number of warring independent states, republics and duchies and kingdoms. You can see there on the map, Kingdom of Naples to the south, but Duchy of Milan, Republic of Florence, Republic of Venice, particularly powerful ones in the north. And as a result of this, they were powerful, they were independent, and they were in competition. They were fortified. They were fighting each other for power, for resources, and the like. And so it's quite a ruthless, violent world. This is the world of Leonardo da Vinci, and a few notes on the screen there for you. You'll be familiar with da Vinci's paintings, of course, Mona Lisa and La Gioconda. There's Michelangelo's painting at the top left. In the middle of the Renaissance. This is just for a bit of a flavour of the Renaissance. But the time is not just artistic, it's also all manner of scientific inventions. And Da Vinci's ones actually have quite a violent, brutal twist themselves. There you can see in the middle of the screen, along the Vitruvian Man on the right and some of his anatomical drawings on the left. But in the centre of the screen, you've got an early machine gun. Lovely. And you've got designs for a tank as well. So he's hundreds of years ahead of his time. He also draws up designs for helicopters and gliders and the like. But there was this genius for violence that was perhaps out of necessity, which is where Machiavelli comes in. That this is what you actually have to do if you want to keep power. You've got to be quite creative and quite innovative in terms of your violence. So, what is a Machiavel? Well, it's someone that is going to outthink and outbetray other people, whilst at the same time still looking pure and still looking noble and honourable. So, in order to do that, they've got to be a very good liar and adept at deceiving others. To do this, they'll use the surface to hide the reality, and this is particularly relevant for Macbeth. You can't trust your eyes. You don't know, the surface deceives you. So this is right there from the start, and fair is foul and foul is fair, and it runs the whole way through the text. There's something we're going to look at a little bit later. A Machiavel perhaps cannot be loved and feared, and if it's one or the other, then you go for the fear option, and you'd rather be feared than loved. And Machiavel would consider that the ends justifies the means. So whatever it takes to get the job done, that's what it takes. And it doesn't matter if those things are particularly nasty or immoral or violent or brutal. If they get the job done, then they are justified. So a particularly ruthless and conniving mindset then to be a Machiavel. And the bottom line is that they're prepared to be very violent in order to survive in this world. So we're going to go through some quotations that might be of use in an essay or in an exam situation. But I think at this point, worth having a think, perhaps pause this slide, have a think about where does Macbeth become a Machiavel? He isn't really at the start. That comes, that progresses as he deteriorates and loses all morality. How does he change? Where does he change? Why is Shakespeare doing this? And what's the effect on this on other characters, on the atmosphere of the play as a whole, on the audience as you receive and watch it, or perhaps the structure and the plot? Because at the start, he's not really a Machiavel. At the start, he's a butcher on the ironically where he ends up. That's his epitaph. This dead butcher and his fiend-like queen, as Malcolm says in the very, very final scene of the whole play. At the start, he's a butcher on the battlefield, and there's lots of violence, and it's horrendous, and he carves out this passage, and he's drowning in blood on the battlefield, but it's, with his special move where he unseams them from the nave to the chaps, so basically sticks a sword in their navel, their belly button, and rips them open to their chaps, their jaws. The unseam, the verb there, unseam, like a seam in your jumper, just ripping it open. Lovely stuff from Shakespeare. But it's straightforward violence on the battlefield. It's not premeditated. It's not calculated. It's not sort of political assassination. It's kind of honest and noble. Man-on-man fighting. In that sense. And so at the start, he's very aware of this. He knows that he shouldn't do any harm to Duncan because he's Duncan's host for one, and his kinsman as well. So it's the double reason why he should, against the murderer, shut the door, not bear the knife himself. And Lady Macbeth is also kind of acutely aware of this. She senses in her husband that he's not really a nasty piece of work. He's not made of the nasty enough stuff to go and grab power. I do fear thy nature is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way, she says. So she knows that he's not out and out nasty. However, this comes with some of her persuasion and of course the witches and what they have to say with Macbeth and convincing this is his fate. A couple of good quotations that show you this idea of the surface hiding the reality. Once they've done the murder, Lady Macbeth says, get on your nightgown, put a disguise on, lest occasion call us and show us to be watchers. So, let's clean ourselves up so we're not going to give the game away. And there's a first example of the surface. You can't really trust it. And indeed, when Macbeth first gets the Thane of Cawdor, that title, he says, "Why do you dress me in borrowed robes?" The idea of dress and disguise being a surface, being a deceit, is one that runs the whole way through the play. Towards the end, his clothes hang about him like a giant's robes on a dwarfish thief. And she continues this. She's going to cover the sort of chamberlain, the chambermen of Duncan, his bodyguards essentially, with blood. Cover them with blood, so it looks like they did it. Again, the surface hides the reality. This very Machiavellian behaviour, and you could describe it as that in an essay or in an exam. Perhaps one of the most beautiful quotations which sum up this Machiavellian superficiality is, "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." So on the surface you are purity, you are nature, you are beauty. Underneath you are deviousness and you are serpentine. And of course Shakespeare will know his audience would recognise serpent would have connotations of the devil or of the forces of darkness. And you've got a lovely juxtaposition between the flower and the serpent. And that also, to push that analysis slightly further, that's the element of duality that you see in lots of places in Macbeth, the good and the evil within one. Here it's within nature, and goes back to fair is foul and foul is fair, and that's within Macbeth himself, and perhaps within all of us, Shakespeare is suggesting. So that quotation is a particularly relevant one when you're wanting to be talking about Machiavelli and his influence in Macbeth. Macbeth starts to develop this thirst for superficiality. A famous quotation: "Stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires." So you've got a lovely double alliteration there of the "let not light" with the deep desires. That so it gives this it rings sort of true. It trips off his tongue quite naturally. But the irony here, he's asking nature to be unnatural, and Shakespeare's suggestion is that this is not sustainable. There's also lots of obvious analysis around moving away from the light and towards the darkness, and trying to cover up heaven and move towards the forces of darkness. But this is him becoming increasingly Machiavellian and sort of realizing what it's going to take. So here's back to those of his chamber, as it seemed had done it. Their hands and faces were all badged with blood. So Lady Macbeth's earlier plan has worked. At least it's worked on poor old Lennox, gullible Lennox. He's fallen for it. Doesn't ask too many questions, and he trusts the surface. That is his mistake. He's not Machiavellian enough himself to read between the lines, as it were, or read between the blood smears. So there's that quotation I started with. There is him realizing that he is going to have to do all manner of things, many of them fairly grisly, in order to keep his power. I think perhaps one of the most chilling moments of Macbeth becoming a real Machiavel is when he turns on Banquo. Banquo has worked him out, and says, "You've got everything that the weird women promised, but I fear thou playedst most foully for it." So he's worked him out. Macbeth thinks that Banquo has likely worked him out, and there's this beautifully tense scene in Act 3, Scene 1, where neither can reveal to the other just how much they know. Macbeth can't reveal to Banquo that he thinks Banquo knows, because then Macbeth's guilt is obvious. Banquo can't reveal to Macbeth that he has worked him out, because then he will face reprisals from Macbeth. So there's this lovely, very, very cagey, tense scene, lots of short sentences back and forth between them when Macbeth is trying to maneuver Banquo into position, wants to know his movements, his whereabouts. Banquo doesn't want to give anything away because he fears being whacked in a sort of mafia type assassination. So Macbeth hits him with a series of questions. "Is it far you ride?" And Banquo said, "Oh, as far as we'll fill the time twixt this and supper." Not giving anything away. And then he wants to know, goes Fleance with you, your little boy? Because obviously that's part of the prophecy that Fleance will become king one day. And then fail not our feast. Last he says, "Okay, I want you back for then. I want you back for this important feast, this sort of jumped up feast." And he's trying to maneuver Banquo into a position where he can kill him. And so the point where he's willing to murder his best friend and his comrade in arms shows that he's prepared now to do anything in order to retain his power. And perhaps this is exemplified by the way in which he goes. It's pretty brutal. Look at the short words here. The first murder. He's not a man of many words. I guess most hitmen aren't. "My lord, his throat is cut. That I did for him." But even the repetition of that T sound almost sounds like a throat being slit, perhaps. I don't know. But the fact that he doesn't have just one murderer, he's got two, he's got three, shows Macbeth as a real Machiavel. I guess you don't trust hitmen, so Macbeth is pretty sharp now. He's not about trusting hitmen. He gets a third one to check the first two are doing their job. And what a brutal, gruesome job it is. Lovely quotation here. That Banquo's final resting place, poor old noble Banquo, his final resting place in a ditch, and he's got 20 trenchant gashes in his head, so basically 20 giant axe wounds, and the least will be a death to nature, so the smallest would have killed him, and he's got 20 of these, and the sound here, the 20 trenchant gashes is a chunk, chunk, chunk. I think Shakespeare is slightly onomatopoeic and perhaps cacophony as well as a language device. He's trying to recreate the sound of the axe, going into the head, chunk, chunk, chunk. Lovely stuff. So this takes its toll on Macbeth, though, because he's not out and out bad at the start. He has good and he has bad in him, but then he's starting to really lose his mind, and when he's kind of almost confesses to his wife that he's losing control, he's mentally deteriorating. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. And again, this is beautifully ambiguous itself, because it could suggest that his head is full of all these evil deeds and plans and plots that he's about to do, or that his head is, has all these horrendous little scorpions rattling around, and like his brain is, and his mind is sort of disintegrating, and he can't handle the demons and the hallucinations and the nightmares that he confesses to elsewhere. But as he has said before, he's got to keep going. That quotation that if I'm stepped in blood so far that I'm basically in the middle of a river. Should I wade further? Should I go back? It would be just as tedious as if I just go over to the other side of the river of blood. So I've started. I might as well finish, kind of thing. And here he is, prepared to do absolutely anything, including infanticide. He's not just prepared to kill Macduff and remove that threat. He wants to wipe out everyone in his entire family. Poor old Macduff. Poor old lady Macduff and the little pipsqueak boy. So there are a number of quotations where Macbeth is a Machiavel. One more springs to mind just before the end of this video, and that is that he keeps a servant feed in all the houses of the other noblemen. So, i.e., he's got spies in all their houses. He's listening in on them, and he's getting his information, his intelligence from them. So he's a very canny political operator. He's a very violent man as he descends into this world of complete and utter violence that disintegrates his mind. And the Machiavellianism that perhaps aided him on his way up doesn't seem to do much for him on the way down, as all the thanes fly from him, and he ends up just as this dead butcher back where he started. So it hasn't done him much good. Right, that's about that. I hope that video was of use to you.